In a quiet suburb of Chicago, where luxurious mansions stand alongside well-kept parks, an event took place that shocked not only the local community but the entire nation. This is the story of Michael Rodriguez, a successful businessman whose life seemed to be the embodiment of the American dream. However, behind the facade of prosperity lurked a sinister conspiracy involving the people closest to Michael. This is a story of betrayal, greed, and cold calculation, showing how even the most prosperous families can hide terrifying secrets. Michael Rodriguez, the 45-year-old founder and CEO of Innotech Solutions, was known in Chicago's business circles as a talented entrepreneur and innovator. His path to success began during his college years when he developed revolutionary software for business process management. This invention became the foundation for the creation of his own company, which in 15 years had grown into one of the leaders of the IT industry, with an annual turnover exceeding $500 million. Rodriguez was born into a family of Mexican immigrants who came to the U.S. in search of a better life. His father worked as a mechanic, and his mother was a nurse. From an early age, Michael showed extraordinary abilities in mathematics and programming, which earned him a scholarship to the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was there that he met his future best friend and business partner, James Collins. After graduating, Michael and James started working together on building a startup. Their friendship seemed unbreakable, supporting each other through every endeavor and sharing the hardships of building the business. As the company began to turn a profit, Michael met his future wife, Emily Green, at a charity event. Emily, a bright and ambitious woman, worked in public relations and quickly charmed Michael with her intelligence and beauty. A year after meeting, Michael and Emily got married. The wedding was luxurious, attended by many influential people from Chicago. James Collins was the best man and gave a heartfelt speech about friendship and loyalty. It seemed that Michael Rodriguez's life couldn't be more perfect. A successful business, a loving wife, and a loyal friend. As the company grew, so did Michael's wealth. He purchased a luxurious mansion in a prestigious Chicago neighborhood, collected expensive cars, and acquired pieces of art. Michael and Emily frequently hosted dinner parties attended by the elite of the business and social worlds. James Collins, who held the position of CFO in Michael's company, was a regular guest at their home and was considered practically a family member. However, behind the glittering success lay problems known only to the closest people. The marriage between Michael and Emily, which appeared perfect, was actually going through a rough patch. Michael's constant work commitments and obsession with his business had created a growing distance between him and his wife. Emily felt lonely and unfulfilled despite their luxurious lifestyle. Michael, deeply absorbed in work, failed to notice his wife's growing detachment. He believed that their material wealth and social status were sufficient compensation for his frequent absences from home. At the same time, the company's financial situation was not as glowing as it appeared. Several risky investments and increasing market competition had led to serious financial difficulties, known only to Michael and James. In an attempt to address the financial challenges, Michael decided to significantly increase his life insurance policy to $50 million. He viewed this as a guarantee of financial stability for his family and company in case of unforeseen circumstances. This substantial insurance became a key factor in the unfolding drama. No one could have guessed that behind the facade of a successful career, a happy marriage, and a strong friendship lurked a sinister plan that would soon turn Michael Rodriguez's life upside down and reveal the true nature of the people he trusted the most. Michael Rodriguez and Emily Green met at a charity event in Chicago in 2010. Emily, a 28-year-old public relations specialist, immediately caught Michael's attention with her striking appearance and sharp intellect. Their romance developed quickly, and within a year, they were married in the luxurious Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Chicago. Michael and Emily's wedding became one of the most talked-about events in the city's elite circles. The ceremony was attended by more than 300 guests, including politicians, businessmen, and celebrities. Michael's best man was his close friend and business partner, James Collins. In his speech, James emphasized how close he and Michael were, calling him the brother he never had. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved into a luxurious mansion in the prestigious Gold Coast neighborhood. The home, spanning more than 10,000 square feet, was equipped with the latest technology and furnished with antique furniture. The garage housed several luxury cars, including a Ferrari and a Bentley. The first years of their marriage seemed blissful. Michael and Emily frequently attended social events, traveled the world, and led an active social life. Emily was involved in charity work, heading a foundation to help children from disadvantaged families. Michael supported all of his wife's endeavors, generously donating to charitable causes. James Collins remained an integral part of the Rodriguez family's life. He often visited their home, spent weekends and holidays with them. Michael and James played golf together, discussed business strategies, and shared personal struggles. Emily also got along well with James, considering him almost part of the family. However, cracks began to appear behind the facade of their perfect life. Michael spent more and more time at work, trying to keep the company afloat in the face of increasing competition. He often missed family dinners, canceled weekend plans, and vacations. Emily felt increasingly lonely and unfulfilled. In 2018, Michael's company faced significant financial difficulties. Several major projects turned out to be unprofitable, and a new product, which had high expectations, failed to meet the market's demands. Michael was forced to downsize and cut expenses, which hurt his reputation in the business community. The stress from work impacted Michael's personal life. He became irritable and often lashed out at Emily over small things. The couple spent less and less time together, and their intimate life practically disappeared. Emily began to feel like her marriage was falling apart but was afraid to bring up the issue with her husband. During this difficult time, James Collins supported both spouses. He helped Michael with the company's financial problems, working overtime and bringing in new investors. For Emily, James became a confidant with whom she could discuss her marital troubles. In the summer of 2019, Michael decided to increase his life insurance policy to $50 million. He explained it as a way to ensure the financial stability of his family and the company in the event of his death. Emily was named the primary beneficiary of the policy, and James was appointed as the trustee. No one could have predicted that this decision would become a turning point in the lives of all three. Behind the scenes of a seemingly strong friendship and perfect marriage, a sinister plan began to unfold, one that would soon turn Michael Rodriguez's life upside down and reveal the true nature of the people he trusted the most. At the beginning of 2020, Michael Rodriguez started noticing strange behavior from both his wife and his best friend. Emily began staying late at work more often, explaining it was due to her duties at the charity foundation. Meanwhile, James began showing an unusual interest in the details of Michael's life insurance policy, frequently bringing up the topic in conversation. Michael's first serious suspicions arose in February, when he accidentally overheard part of a phone conversation between Emily and someone else. She was speaking in a hushed voice. "We need to be careful. Michael mustn't suspect anything." When Michael asked her who she was talking to, Emily nervously replied that it was a friend, and they were planning a surprise for his birthday. A week later, Michael found a piece of paper in the pocket of James's jacket, left in the guest room. On the paper were scribbled financial calculations, and the figure of $50 million was circled several times, with the initials R. Emily Rodriguez written next to it. Michael didn't confront his friend directly, deciding instead to observe the situation further. In March, Michael noticed that Emily started meeting James alone more frequently. They explained it as preparations for a charity event, but their meetings seemed too frequent and too long for simple organizational discussions. Michael began tracking his wife using a GPS tracker on her phone and discovered that she had visited the Ritz-Carlton Hotel downtown several times. Michael's suspicions deepened when he found search queries in Emily's browser history regarding the effects of various poisons and how they are detected during autopsies. Emily explained this as research for a new detective novel she claimed she had started writing, but Michael couldn't remember her ever expressing any interest in writing before. In April, Michael decided to install hidden cameras in his home office and living room. He also hired a private investigator to follow Emily and James. The investigator provided photos showing Emily and James embracing and kissing in a park, far from prying eyes. Michael was shocked by the evidence of their affair but chose not to confront his wife and best friend directly. He realized that something more sinister might be at play than just a romantic relationship. Michael began carefully reviewing the company's financial documents and discovered several suspicious transactions carried out by James without his knowledge. In May, Michael installed a listening device in Emily's bedroom under the pretense of replacing an electrical outlet. A few days later, he managed to record a conversation between Emily and James, confirming his worst fears. They were discussing a plan to kill Michael and claim the $50 million from his life insurance policy. Emily, we need to act quickly. I can't pretend to be the loving wife any longer. James, don't rush. We have to plan everything carefully. No mistakes. Emily, what if he suspects something? James, don't worry. I control the company's finances. If necessary, we can fake a bankruptcy and drive him to suicide. Michael was devastated by what he heard. The people he trusted most were plotting to murder him. He knew he couldn't go to the police without solid evidence. It would be his word against his wife's and his best friends, and they could easily portray him as a paranoid man trying to hold onto a crumbling marriage and business. Michael decided to continue gathering evidence while developing his own plan to expose the conspirators. He began keeping a journal, recording every suspicious action by Emily and James, and made copies of all incriminating documents and recordings. At the end of May, Michael planted cameras in James's home, using a spare key he had. He also hired cybersecurity experts to monitor Emily and James's emails and messages. Michael knew he was treading a fine line legally, but he felt he had no choice. His life was at stake. June 2020 was a month of agonizing waiting and evidence gathering for Michael Rodriguez. He continued to play the role of an unsuspecting husband and friend while simultaneously preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Michael understood that he would soon face a difficult decision: expose the conspirators and destroy his life, or let them carry out their plan and attempt to outsmart them at the last moment. At the beginning of July 2020, Michael Rodriguez had gathered enough evidence to be certain of the conspiracy against him. An analysis of the company's financial records revealed a series of suspicious transactions carried out by James Collins. Around $5 million had been transferred to offshore accounts under the guise of investments in non-existent projects. On July 7th, Michael met with his longtime friend and lawyer, Richard Stern, in an inconspicuous cafe on the outskirts of Chicago. Michael shared his suspicions and provided the evidence he had collected. Richard was shocked by what he heard but agreed to help Michael devise a plan of action. Richard advised Michael not to go to the police immediately, as the evidence might not be enough to arrest Emily and James. Instead, they decided to continue gathering information and set a trap for the conspirators. On July 12th, Michael installed additional cameras and microphones in his office, hoping to record conversations between James and potential accomplices. He also began keeping a diary, meticulously documenting all his actions and observations. On July 15th, a key moment in uncovering the conspiracy occurred. Michael accidentally left a fake medical report on his desk, indicating serious heart problems. The cameras recorded James, when left alone in the office, taking a photo of the document on his phone. The next day, Michael overheard a phone conversation between Emily and James. Emily, did you see the report? This is our chance. James, yes, but we need to be careful. It has to look like a natural death. Emily, I have an idea. I can mix drugs into his food to cause a heart attack. With his medical history, no one will suspect anything. On July 20th, Michael found several packs of medication in his home medicine cabinet that he had never purchased. An analysis conducted at Richard's request showed that they were potent drugs capable of causing a heart attack if overdosed. On July 23rd, Michael noticed Emily adding something to his morning coffee. He discreetly poured it out and sent the cup for analysis. The results confirmed the presence of dangerous substances. Over the next week, Michael continued to feign worsening health, complaining of chest pains and shortness of breath. He noticed Emily and James exchanging glances and whispering to each other every time his health was mentioned. On July 30th, Michael accidentally overheard a conversation between Emily and James in the garden. "James, we can't wait any longer. The company is on the verge of collapse. We need to act now." "Emily, I agree. Let's do it this weekend. I'll increase the dose of the drugs, and you be ready with the documents for the insurance company." Michael realized that he was running out of time. He contacted Richard, and they devised a plan of action. They decided to involve the police but proceed very cautiously to avoid alerting the conspirators. On August 1st, Michael met with Detective Sarah Johnson from the Homicide Department. He provided all the evidence he had collected and described Emily and James's plan. Detective Johnson was impressed by the volume and quality of the information. She agreed to help Michael expose the conspirators but warned that they would need irrefutable proof of their intentions for an arrest. They decided to set a trap. Michael would fake a heart attack over the weekend when Emily and James planned to execute their plan. The police installed hidden cameras and microphones throughout the Rodriguez home and prepared a rapid response team. On the evening of August 5th, a Saturday, the plan was put into action. Michael lost consciousness in his office after dinner. The cameras recorded Emily entering the room, seeing her unconscious husband. But instead of calling for help, she took out her phone and called James. "Emily, it's done. Come quickly. We need to prepare everything before the medics arrive." "James, I'm on my way. Are you sure he's dead?" "Emily, I'll check his pulse now. Yes, no pulse." "Hurry." 10 minutes later, James arrived at the house. The cameras recorded them discussing the details of their plan, including forging medical documents and preparing the insurance claim. At that moment, the police, led by Detective Johnson, stormed the house. Emily and James were caught off guard and arrested on the spot. Michael came to and gave his statement to the police. The exposure of the conspiracy became a sensation in Chicago. Michael Rodriguez, who everyone believed to be a victim of a failing marriage and financial troubles, turned out to be a cold-blooded strategist who had outwitted his enemies in their own game. After Emily and James were arrested, the investigation began unraveling the intricate web of their criminal conspiracy. Detective Sarah Johnson and her team conducted searches at the Rodriguez home, the company office, and James Collins' apartment. The gathered evidence allowed the authorities to reconstruct the timeline and details of their plot to kill Michael. The investigation revealed that Emily first considered eliminating Michael in late 2019. The company's financial difficulties and the deterioration of her relationship with her husband pushed her toward this drastic solution. During one of their secret meetings at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Emily shared her thoughts with James. James, who had been in love with Emily for a long time, not only supported her idea but also proposed a plan. He explained the company's financial problems, warning that bankruptcy was inevitable unless they took decisive action. James convinced Emily that Michael's death would solve all their problems. They would receive a huge insurance payout, erase the company's debts, and start a new life together. By January 2020, Emily and James had begun actively preparing for Michael's murder. They met in various locations around Chicago to discuss the details of their plan, always taking precautions. For communication, they used disposable phones and encrypted messaging apps. The first step was to increase Michael's life insurance. James, taking advantage of his position as CFO and Michael's trust, convinced him that this was a necessary move, framing it as a way to secure the company and family's future in case of unforeseen circumstances. In February, Emily began researching ways to kill Michael that would appear to be from natural causes. She studied various poisons and their effects on the body, consulted under a false name on criminology forums, and even purchased several books on toxicology. Meanwhile, James was busy preparing the financial side of the plan. He created several shell companies and opened offshore bank accounts to quickly and discreetly transfer the insurance money out of the country once it was collected. In March, Emily acquired a batch of powerful drugs capable of inducing a heart attack through the dark web. The package was delivered to a fake address she had rented specifically for this purpose. Emily carefully studied the dosage and methods of administering the drugs to ensure no mistakes would be made. April and May were dedicated to rehearsing the details of their plan. Emily and James conducted several practice runs, refining their actions in case of Michael's sudden death. They crafted their alibis, synchronized their stories for the police and medical personnel, and divided responsibilities in the process of obtaining the insurance payout. In early June, Emily began gradually adding small doses of the drugs to Michael's food and drinks. Her goal was to deteriorate his health so that his sudden death from a heart attack would raise no suspicions. During this time, James was preparing the documents needed for a swift collection of the insurance money. By late July 2020, everything was in place for the final stage of their plan. Emily and James chose August 5th as the date. They believed a Saturday evening would make it easier to stage the accident and expedite the necessary documentation for medical and law enforcement authorities. The day before the planned murder, Emily carried out a full rehearsal of her actions. She practiced the motions she would use to mix the lethal dose of the drug into Michael's evening tea and rehearsed how she would feign grief and despair in front of potential witnesses. James spent that day finalizing the financial documents. He prepared the insurance claim, gathered all necessary forms, and made arrangements with a friendly doctor who would help issue the death certificate without raising too many questions. On the evening of August 4th, Emily and James met for the last time before executing their plan. They went over every detail one more time, checked the supplies of drugs and documents, and were both confident of their success. Already, they were making plans for their future together, unaware of the very different fate awaiting them. Neither Emily nor James realized that their every move and conversation had long been recorded by the police. They had no idea that Michael had uncovered their plot and had set a trap for them. So absorbed were the conspirators in their scheme that they failed to notice they had become mere pawns in someone else's game. August 5th, 2020, a Saturday that was supposed to mark the end of Michael Rodriguez's life, began like any other. Michael woke up early, had breakfast with Emily, and retreated to his home office, ostensibly to work on an important project. In reality, he was doing one last check of all the cameras and microphones that had been discreetly installed throughout the house. At 10 a.m., Detective Sarah Johnson gathered her team in a mobile command post, concealed in an unmarked van parked 2 blocks from the Rodriguez residence. She gave a final briefing to her squad, emphasizing the need to act with the utmost caution to avoid alerting the suspects prematurely. Throughout the day, Emily entered Michael's office multiple times, ostensibly to bring him coffee or snacks. Each time, she attempted to slip small doses of poison into his food and drinks, gradually increasing the concentration. Michael, however, pretended to consume the tainted items while secretly disposing of them. By the evening, Michael began to feign symptoms of deteriorating health. He complained of dizziness, nausea, and chest pains. Emily, playing the part of a concerned wife, suggested calling a doctor, but Michael declined, insisting he needed to finish his important work. At 7:30 p.m., James Collins arrived at the Rodriguez house under the pretense of discussing urgent company matters. In reality, he had brought the final dose of poison, which was intended to ensure Michael's death by heart attack. At 8:15 p.m., Emily invited both Michael and James to dinner. During the meal, she surreptitiously slipped the lethal dose into Michael's wine glass. The cameras captured the moment in full detail, providing indisputable evidence of the criminal act. At 9 p.m., after drinking the poisoned wine, Michael returned to his office. 15 minutes later, he began calling out for help, loudly complaining of severe chest pains. Following their prearranged plan, he simulated losing consciousness and collapsed to the floor. Emily rushed into the office, and upon seeing her husband's lifeless body, she did not call for an ambulance. Instead, she dialed James. "Emily, it worked. Come over right now. We need to get everything ready before the medics arrive." "James, on my way. Are you sure he's dead?" "Emily, let me check his pulse." "No, there's no pulse." "Hurry." At 9:30 p.m., James arrived at the house. He and Emily began discussing their next steps, completely unaware that every word was being recorded. "James, we need to call the ambulance and the police. I'll handle the insurance paperwork." "Emily, okay. I'll call in 5 minutes. We need to make sure everything looks natural. By 9:40 p.m., with both Emily and James fully convinced their plan had succeeded, a SWAT team led by Detective Johnson stormed the house. The conspirators were caught off guard and arrested at the scene of the crime. Michael regained consciousness and immediately provided his statement to the police. All the evidence, the recorded conversations, surveillance footage, financial documents, and even the poisoned wine, was meticulously documented and added to the case file. Emily and James were taken to the police station for interrogation. Faced with the overwhelming evidence against them, they began confessing but tried to shift the blame onto each other. Emily claimed that the idea to murder Michael originated with James, accusing him of manipulating her during a time of emotional vulnerability. James, however, insisted he was merely following Emily's instructions, blinded by his love for her. Detective Johnson and her team conducted a thorough analysis of all the evidence. They pieced together the full timeline of the conspiracy, from the first discussions of murder to the attempted execution of the plan. Michael Rodriguez, despite the stress of nearly being killed, fully cooperated with the investigation. He provided all the necessary documents related to his company and personal finances, helping expose the extent of James's financial schemes. News of Emily Rodriguez and James Collins's arrest quickly spread across Chicago. Local media outlets eagerly reported on the sensational case, with the story of a successful businessman who uncovered his wife and best friend's plot against him becoming the talk of the town. The operation to apprehend the conspirators was hailed as a model of precision and professionalism. Detective Johnson received commendations from the police leadership for her diligence and meticulous preparation in conducting the arrests. Michael Rodriguez, who survived the murder attempt, became the subject of widespread public admiration. Many marveled at his composure and ability to outmaneuver the criminals at their own game. However, Michael himself was far from celebratory. The betrayal by those closest to him had left deep emotional scars, which he would have to face in the long road ahead. On August 6, 2020, the day after Emily Rodriguez and James Collins were arrested, the Cook County District Attorney officially charged them with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted first-degree murder, and large-scale fraud. At a press conference, Prosecutor John Baker stated, "This case highlights how dangerous human greed can be. The accused not only planned to take a life but intended to profit from that death. We will seek the maximum punishment." Both Emily and James were assigned court-appointed attorneys as their assets had been frozen pending the investigation. Emily's lawyer, Sarah Evans, indicated that her defense would be based on the emotional manipulation and pressure exerted by James. Meanwhile, James's attorney, Michael Green, argued that his client had been coerced into the plot by Emily. On August 8, the first court hearing was held to determine bail. The prosecution pushed for both defendants to be held without bail, citing the severity of the crime and the risk of flight. Judge Laura Henderson agreed, ordering Emily and James to remain in custody until the trial. During preliminary hearings, the prosecution presented a detailed report of the gathered evidence. Video footage was shown of Emily lacing Michael's food and drinks with poison, and audio recordings captured conversations between the conspirators, discussing the specifics of the murder plot. Particular attention was given to the financial aspect of the case. Investigators uncovered several offshore accounts opened by James, where the insurance payout was to be transferred after Michael's death. Evidence of financial fraud within Michael's company, orchestrated by James over several years, was also presented. Michael Rodriguez, the primary witness for the prosecution, gave a detailed account of how he first became suspicious of the plot, how he collected evidence, and how he worked with the police to catch the conspirators. His testimony was supported by journal entries and photographs he had taken over several months. Detective Sarah Johnson testified about the investigation and the operation that led to the arrests. She provided a comprehensive report of the surveillance efforts, including the installation of hidden cameras and listening devices in the Rodriguez home. Toxicology experts confirmed that the substances Emily had been mixing into Michael's food and drinks could indeed induce a heart attack if administered in the correct dosage. Analysis of the substances found in Emily's possession indicated she had intended to use a lethal dose on the day of the planned murder. Financial experts presented an analysis of James's activities within Michael's company, revealing numerous cases of document forgery, illegal fund transfers, and manipulations of financial statements. The total damages inflicted by James's fraudulent activities were estimated to be in the millions of dollars. As the trial progressed, public interest in the case grew. Reporters gathered daily outside the courthouse, seeking comments from those involved. Michael Rodriguez's story of outsmarting the conspirators drew widespread admiration and sympathy. Attorneys for Emily and James attempted to challenge the legality of the evidence, arguing that the hidden cameras and listening devices had been installed without a court warrant, violating their clients' rights. However, the judge dismissed these claims, stating there were sufficient grounds for these actions in light of the attempted murder investigation. By the end of September 2020, the prosecution had finished presenting its evidence, and the case was ready to go to the jury for a verdict. The public eagerly awaited the conclusion of what had already been dubbed the case of the century in Chicago's criminal history. Despite the emotional strain of the trial, Michael Rodriguez began regaining control of his company. He initiated an internal audit to uncover the full extent of James's damage and devised a plan to stabilize the company's financial position. The Rodriguez case became a subject of discussion not only in crime reports, but also in psychological and sociological circles. Experts analyzed the motives of the criminals, trying to understand how seemingly successful people could commit such a brutal crime. The trial of Emily Rodriguez and James Collins began on October 5, 2020 in Cook County Circuit Court. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, lawyers, and just curious citizens were eager to witness this high-profile trial. Prosecutor John Baker began the trial with a vivid opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have before you a case that shows how greed and betrayal can destroy even the strongest relationships. Emily Rodriguez and James Collins didn't just plan a murder. They plotted the cold-blooded destruction of the man they both swore their love and loyalty to. The defendant's attorneys chose different defense strategies. Sarah Evans, representing Emily, insisted that her client was a victim of James' manipulation. Emily was a victim of circumstance. She was emotionally vulnerable because of problems in her marriage, and James took advantage of that by dragging her into his criminal scheme. In contrast, Michael Green, James' defense attorney, tried to portray his client as someone who acted under duress. James Collins was blinded by his love for Emily. He could not resist her influence and agreed to participate in a plan that actually went against all his principles. Over the following weeks, the court heard testimony from dozens of witnesses. A key moment was Michael Rodriguez's testimony. For several hours, he detailed how he noticed the first signs of a conspiracy, how he gathered evidence, and how he cooperated with the police. "Michael, I didn't want to believe that the two people closest to me could want me dead, but the facts spoke for themselves. Every day I lived with the thought that my next sip could be my last." Detective Sarah Johnson presented the results of the police investigation to the court. She showed video footage of Emily putting poison in Michael's food, as well as audio recordings of conversations between the conspirators. Special attention was paid to the financial side of the case. Expert accountants presented evidence of the numerous frauds that James was conducting in Michael's company. The total amount of damage amounted to more than $7 million. The testimony of Michael's company employees revealed details of how James gradually seized control of the firm's financial flows. Many spoke of Emily's strange behavior in the final months before her arrest. The trial culminated with the testimony of the defendants themselves. Emily, speaking in court for the first time, cried, "I didn't want it to end like this. I just felt so alone and unwanted. James promised me a new life and I believed him." James, for his part, tried to put the blame on Emily. It was her idea. She said Michael had ruined her life, that he wasn't worth living. "I loved her and would do anything to make her happy." The jury deliberated for 3 days. On November 10, 2020, they reached a verdict. Emily Rodriguez and James Collins were found guilty on all charges. Judge Laura Henderson announced the verdict on November 17th. Emily was sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole. James received 30 years in prison and a $10 million fine. After the verdict was announced, Michael Rodriguez issued a brief statement to the press. "Today, justice was served. But it doesn't make me happy. I have lost two people I thought were the closest to me. Now I have to relearn how to trust people." The Rodriguez case has been the subject of much discussion in legal and psychological circles. It has raised important questions about the nature of betrayal, the limits of trust in family and business relationships, and the human ability to resist a carefully planned conspiracy. For Michael Rodriguez, the conclusion of the trial was the beginning of a new phase of his life. He had to restore his company's reputation, rebuild his personal life, and learn to live with the realization that the people closest to him can be the most dangerous enemies. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories that are coming out every day.